In this video, I'm proposing a system of rune handles that can be used to refer to runes no matter which runic alphabet they're from. By handle, I mean something like this. I mean a somewhat informal name that's not necessarily the original name. I like this approach because it avoids some problems. Like, for example, with the naming scheme where you apply terms like the F rune, you run into problems when you hit runes like this one, or how about this one? Because, yeah, you can call it the Z rune, but that only really applies to Elder Futhark. If you're talking about the same rune in a medieval Futhork context, then it's not a Z rune anymore. Another approach is to try to use one of the old names for a rune, so you could call this Feoch. The problem with that is then you end up throwing in a bunch of out-of-place phonemes in your speech. It's just kind of weird. There is a weakness to this approach, and that's that we're not always entirely sure what the name of a rune meant. So, for example, I don't think anyone's entirely sure what Kalk meant, and so we have Chalk as a guess, and there are other guesses like Chalice and Slipper, but I went with Chalk. In some cases, we have educated guesses, like the English rune poem tells us that this rune referred to, or rather the name of this rune, referred to some kind of militia gear. And so I think calling it the armament rune works, because even though we don't know exactly what we're talking about, we can infer that it was an armament. In order to specify a certain variant, you can use some kind of qualifier. Like, for example, in Anglo-Frisian contexts, this is known as the bookhand S rune. So we could take that terminology and we could, if we want to, we can refer to it as the bookhand sun rune. And likewise, we could call this the stung wealth rune, the stung birch rune, and so on and so forth. Okay, before I end the video, I just want to point out two things. First of all, a lot of these handles are already common. I'm just trying to complete the system. And part of my thinking is that because some of these terms, like the U rune, are common, that's more reason to get rid of the other system where we say like the F rune and the R rune. Because when you hear someone say the U rune, do they mean the U rune, as in like the Aurochs rune, the rune which is kind of equivalent to the Latin letter U? Or do they mean the U rune as in the U tree rune? So it's kind of confusing to have ambiguity like that. Okay, so the last thing I want to say is I just want to warn people that there are terms like the star rune and the lantern rune, and these refer to just the appearance. So for example, in Old Norse, a star rune might be a hail rune. Meanwhile, in Frisian, a star rune might be a harvest rune.